take a deep breath and create space where your mind doesn't have to be on getting things done. And as you do that, then we're able to activate this, I think what you would call the second gear of this, that really helps us not just think about the situation, but think about our thoughts of the situation.
Yeah, the second gear is to sit back and start to evaluate what those thoughts are actually saying. So to identify those thoughts that we're having, what's the story we're telling ourselves about the event, and to kind of match that up to the facts that we know of what happened and see just how accurate those thoughts are.
How would you coach me in that?
Yeah, in my office we have what's called ABC worksheets. A stands for activating event. That's like the facts of the situation. B is the middle column, which is beliefs, which are our thoughts. And then C are the consequences, which are the emotions. We know we're struggling when we experience the emotion that's uncomfortable, whether that's distress or anxiety. And oftentimes we refer back to that activating event and say, see, I'm anxious or I'm nervous or I'm sad because this happened. Well, B happens, but our beliefs and thoughts are so automatic and so quick, we just assume they're right. And oftentimes when we slow down the process, we realize we are engaging in some pretty big thinking errors. We're jumping to conclusions.
I never do that.
I know, right? And we exaggerate certain information or minimize others.
Ever
I know.
Do that. I never
and
exaggerate.
It's crazy because we all start to realize that all of these are most often not entirely correct. And it's when we find ourselves stuck in these seasons of life where there's a lot of anxiety or a lot of depression, that's when it's greatly valuable to go back and say, okay, wait a minute, what is going on in that middle column? And how accurate are those beliefs?
Take your cell phone example and give us a rundown of like the ABC exercise.
So I often ask the students really to identify the emotion, because that's easiest, kind of how are you going to feel? Because that's really where we start to analyze the situation, is we're in this consequence, I'm feeling this emotion. And that's where they identify they're angry, they're hurt, they're upset, and then there's some that are just apathetic. They don't care. They're like, it doesn't bother me. So then we say, okay, well, what happened? Let's go back to the activating event. And then they'll say, well, you were walking in the mall, you were looking at your phone, I said hi to you, you looked up at me and ignored me. And usually that comes up, 90% of students bring that up. And I kind of stop them right there, because I really want them to see that that's not necessarily a fact. That's a degree of interpretation. For you to say that I ignored you requires that I heard you, acknowledged that you, and understood that you were talking to me, and then chose not to acknowledge you back. I mean, my mind could have been in many different places, but the facts are, you said hi, I was looking at my phone, I glanced up, and I kept walking. Those are the facts. But it's really interesting, because then the students start to understand, okay, wait a minute, we have many different emotional consequences for the same event. There has to be something else happening. Because if our emotions were directly in relationship to the situation, we would all have the same experience no matter what happens. Whenever an event occurs, the outcome would be the same. That's when we start to unpack B. And B is what happens automatically and so quickly that we often don't think twice about it. So taking a deep breath really starts to allow us time to unpack B and evaluate. Because our emotions, in turn, have to match B, not match A. Our emotions match what we say is going on.